Congresswoman Nancy Mace, a Republican from South Carolina, joins me now to talk about her new marijuana bill, the States Reform Act. Her bill aims to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, and frankly, it does a lot more stuff, too. Congresswoman Mace, it's great to be with you. You're in the news just about everywhere, so I'm glad we got a slice of your time to talk about this. I just want to read you something that you said. I don't want to tell our audience, it's not something you often hear. You said, I would categorize this bill as a compromise bill. It has something good for everyone, Republicans and Democrats. I put a lot of thought into how we could make this kind of legislation palatable for people on both sides of the aisle and across every state in the country, recognizing that all states are different. That kind of statement in policy issue after policy issue is something I look for. You don't often hear it.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested in your wiring. Why cannabis? And are you the House version of Joe Manchin at this moment?
Well, I don't know if I would go there, but I would tell you with regards to cannabis, this is an issue that I worked on for a very long time. And it was Republicans in the state of South Carolina that brought CBD and hemp to the state of South Carolina. It's Republicans in my state, in fact, state lawmakers in my district, in the 1st Congressional District of South Carolina, that are bringing medical cannabis to South Carolina. They have a hearing in a few weeks. So I'm passionate about the issue. And I've told this story, personal story, only once or twice before. But one of the reasons that I am very passionate about it is veterans issues. When you talk to vets with PTSD and you see some of the studies, I've seen that firsthand, and the veteran suicide crisis. I have a member of the family that had an opioid overdose several years ago. And then my own personal story, when I was raped when I was 18, I was prescribed antidepressants during a very, very tough time in my life. And those prescribed medications made my feelings of depression, it worsened over time for taking them. So I stopped taking them and I started taking cannabis. Didn't know at the time what that effect would be, but it certainly helped me cut my anxiety during a really tough, incredibly difficult time in my life. And so there are many of us that can draw on these personal stories that we've had and that we can share. And I've worked on this bill for a really, really long time. Probably about 9 months. Probably had I gave my staff the outline of what I wanted to do back in March. We got a first sort of draft in April. And then over the last couple of months, I've been talking to different stakeholders, different members of Congress, trying to make sure that I put forth a bill that was common sense, that was very pragmatic, and that would actually have something for everyone. I think it's very rare up here on the Hill when, especially during how divided our country is right now, especially between parties and even intra-party, but the ability to provide something that I think is a framework for Republicans and Democrats working together. There are a lot of Democrats that ran on this issue last year. I personally ran on this issue last year. And the fact that we've not been able to do it yet, and listening to Senator Hickenlooper, I mean, it makes so much sense. And there's very little to disagree with. And there's nothing really controversial about cannabis except for here in Washington, where you have some members who are afraid of it, who are afraid to touch it. Right. And it shouldn't be that way. We're funding the cartels, as the senator said, by having all cash businesses. It's dangerous. This year, cannabis will be a $25 billion industry. And in 2025, they're estimating it to be $75 billion. Right. And so it's past time that we address this. And I believe the framework that I provided gives us a roadmap of how to do it with both sides of the aisle. There's some criminal justice in here, reforms. There's protections for states that want to have social equity. I mean, there's no limit to what this thing can do.
Yeah, I mean, so, I just want to point out the States Reform Act. Maybe you can, take us on a, short form, quick journey through it. But it does more than just look at, legalization, or normalization is the word I've been trying. How do you take an illegal, drug and normalize it when we know it's here and there? But there are elements of it that I find very important. Expunging criminal records for nonviolent marijuana addresses before, which has come up in some conversations. But, people don't understand, I think, sometimes how uneven the application of those laws were. And a lot of the racial injustice in this country has been tied to that. But also looking, as you mentioned, to veterans, also looking at how do you create a taxation system that doesn't create a black market? So I just love, and then also, we have a patchwork right out there. We have 17 different states with it, but every state's a little different. But how you bring in something to allow states to be where they are at, but you create these pathways. So can you give us a quick snapshot of the States Reform Act?
Yeah, I sure can. The first thing it does is it takes it off of Schedule 1. A number of reasons, obviously medical research being one of them. It also would decriminalize it. So there's an expungement and release from federal prison for nonviolent cannabis offenders. It was Henry Anslinger, that acknowledged when cannabis was prohibited, it was because of Mexican immigrants and black jazz musicians, right? That were promoting it. It was a reason for them to go into black and brown communities and to arrest them. And even today in 2021, you are 4 times as likely to be arrested for marijuana if you're black or brown versus being white. And so this really helps do away and I think resolve some of the injustices that are there with having that expungement part of it. Of course, that would only apply to the federal level, but states can do what they want at the state level for those offenses, right. And that's very important as well. The other thing that it does is it does have protections in there for every state. So every state's different. There are only 3 states in the country that have absolutely no cannabis reform. So, for example, in my home state of South Carolina, we have CBD and we have hemp. In Florida, they have medical marijuana. California, Colorado, they have full adult recreational use. And so it recognizes that and provides a framework that if you are legal in those states, that you would be grandfathered in, your business would be legal. You wouldn't need a Safe Banking Act because if your business is legal and operated like any other business, then you can bank and get loans and financing just like any other business. What this bill also does is it provides a framework that would treat cannabis like alcohol. And so you have the TTB that would govern interstate commerce. There's imports and exports, just like alcohol. And the ATF has some regulation over product, the USDA over growers, just like, barley, for instance, with beer or alcohol. So it's just treating it like alcohol provides that framework as a very low federal excise tax at 3%. And some of the studies in talking to different stakeholders, 3 to 4% really is a safe spot, a safe zone where you can keep taxes very low to help prevent black markets or illicit markets from popping up. And we've seen in places like California where the taxes are very high, the black market is still very real because their taxes are so high. So we have to recognize, at least at the federal level, the lower we keep them, the better job or opportunity we have to prevent a black market from taking over. There are provisions in there that some other previous cannabis bills have and some don't that would incentivize states to make it illegal for anyone under the age of 21, with the exception of medical cannabis use.
Right.
There are provisions in there to prevent advertising and marketing to kids. There are protections in there for vets. Vets can't be discriminated against if they use it, from jobs or housing or loans or financing, et cetera. I also have specific provisions in there for medical cannabis users. States, whatever is going on in states, it is legal, but there's special protections in there for almost every category: terminal illness, cancer, chronic pain, sickle cell, HIV, AIDS, arthritis, you name it. I wanted to offer something for everyone. And for the 3 states that still prohibit cannabis in any form, well, those states can still prohibit it under state law if they want to. So I say this, and I mean this seriously, but if you are against cannabis, you'll like this bill because it doesn't mandate it everywhere for recreational use. If states that want to have the reforms that they already have can continue to have them. And if you're for cannabis, it protects states no matter what kind of cannabis reform that they have. So there's something in there for everyone. And I'm tremendously proud of the bill, and we're working to get a few more Republicans on it, and then we're going to open it up to Democrats.
Right.
And it'll be a truly bipartisan piece.
Well, thanks for taking us on that journey. We were taking questions from the audience. We've got a good one from Carmen Hansen. Carmen?
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I'm Carmen Hansen, Associate Director for Health at the National Conference of State Legislatures. And my question is, how will federal policymakers include the experiences and lessons learned from dozens of states with existing cannabis regulatory systems?
Great question.
Yeah, great question. And that'll be up to states to help figure out what has gone well. You can see some states are very different, some overregulated, some underregulated. Like I said, places like California, where taxes are exorbitantly high, they still struggle with the black market. And so it gives states the freedom to present a plan to the federal government and say, this is our policy, and to get that approved through the various agencies that would be involved in regulating those policies, and allows them to do what they want to do with limited involvement from the federal government. Because I think the minute you overregulate this thing at the federal level, it'll get in the way and could exacerbate any issues that do exist, where states can be more nimble, they can act faster when there are issues. Their state legislatures can move faster than the federal government ever would be able to.
Representative, it's really great to have this conversation with you, and I love how substantive you are on policy issues, but I got to ask you some non-policy quick questions. I know that you're having a very interesting roller coaster ride with one of your colleagues, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and also Leader McCarthy. And I guess, as we sort of talk about the differences between parties, you mentioned even within parties, I'm wondering if there's a pathway for you and Representative Greene to potentially bury the hatchet or to be responsible if the Republicans win back the House. You were opposed to her losing her committee assignments before. How do you feel going forward?
Yeah, I ran as a constitutional conservative, and I've told everyone, whether you're Republican or Democrat, that I'm willing to work with you if you are willing to work with me. But I won't tolerate members on either side of the aisle or even within my own party who are racist, who promote bigotry, religious bigotry or otherwise, or anti-Semitism. I've called out Democrats and Republicans alike, and I will continue to do so. I represent a swing district. I represent almost equally Republicans and Democrats, and it's important that I remain consistent on these issues, no matter who's in the White House or who's in the majority. And, no one can defend myself as best as I can defend myself against individuals, including yesterday when Congresswoman Greene lied about my record. That's not okay. And I felt incumbent to defend my record. I have a great record. I just came back on the heels of a trip to Taiwan, a bipartisan trip. The issues of aggression from China and Russia, they're real. And what I learned when I was over there overseas spending Thanksgiving with our troops, by the way, is that when we work together in a bipartisan way, we show unity in our country and around the world rather than this division that we have right now, we're stronger on the world stage. And I was really proud to be a part of this historic bipartisan trip. China demanded we cancel it, and Chairman Mark Takano and the other Democrats on board the congressional delegation would not stand down. We don't take orders from communists. And it's important that we show friends and partners and allies in the region that we're going to be there for them and to work together and show that strength so that we can take on China if and when need be. All these things are important. I've done a great job of working with both the left and the right. I've passed civil rights legislation with Hakeem Jeffries. I have worked on funding for scholarships for Gold Star families and veterans. I have passed that bill out of the House. That was my second one. The third bill I worked on with Ro Khanna, a progressive out of California. We passed legislation related to our national security and the means of cybersecurity. And so I want to be an effective leader in Congress, and that means defending my record when I need to, even if it's against members of my own party, but also passing legislation that has meaning. And this particular bill, the States Reform Act, has great meaning to me and people from all walks of life. And I will continue to work hard and defend my record when I need to, and call people out for their BS too. Right. So all of the above.
Is Leader McCarthy giving a green light to some of the extremists in the caucus and making life uncomfortable for moderates? Is he setting the right tone?
I mean, he's tried to do his best, but some of these, QAnon sort of leaning QAnon members of the conference, they're never going to listen to leadership, and they're not normal in any way, shape, or form, especially when you're like doctoring. I mean, one of the things she did yesterday was doctor videos of an interview that I did to warp where I am on life issues. And so, the leadership has done a good job of trying to, I think, rein that in. But at some point, she's out of control and totally unhinged. And so that's not my problem. I will step up and speak out when I feel like my record is being distorted or someone is lying about my record. It's important that people understand the truth. And my constituents, they hired me to do a job, and I'm fighting for them. And I represent not only my constituents on both sides of the aisle, I represent my state and my country. And I'm going to continue to fight for the values that make us a great nation, no matter who's coming after me.
Representative Mace, I know you got a heart out, but I got to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
I just got a release from your office about Dr. Fauci and Monkey Island. What's going on Morgan Island?
Yeah, well, this is an island that
set it up for our audience because they'll know.
Community.
I just got this release from you folks, so no one knows much about this. So, use this as a moment to kind of give us a story about Monkey Island.
Yeah, White Coat Waste did another FOIA a couple weeks ago. And Monkey Island is an island off of Morgan Island, off the coast of my district in South Carolina. We thought it was more of a retirement community for monkeys that had been part of lab experiments. Well, what we found out a few weeks ago is they're taking 500 or 600 monkeys a year and then putting them into labs. just disgusting and barbaric scientific lab testing with these monkeys and killing them, and it's disgusting. And so we just found out about this. Dr. Fauci still has not responded to my letter about beagle puppies. And so now we just found this out, and I will be going down to Monkey Island in a few weeks to bring light and attention to this issue. This is an issue like cannabis that I believe can bring Republicans and Democrats together. And I have to tell you, our country needs that kind of partnership and working together now more than ever.
Well, Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina, the sponsor of the States Reform Act, thank you for enlightening us about that act, the cannabis industry, so many more things about the element of how culture is going in the GOP caucus, but also about Monkey Island, monkeys and beagles. I mean, it's been thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, and y'all have a great afternoon.